So where we left off with from last time, okay? What would you be able to tell me that is within the phylum Mollusca? What do they all have in common? Whether it's a clam, an octopod, a squid, or even that of a snail. Those are all mollusks because, especially when you look at a clam, you know that's a clam because what? It has a shell on the, doesn't necessarily have to be on the exterior, it can be on the interior as well. And what about food gathering? There's something inside their mouth. Getting closer. Just working now. Oh, there we go. Wow, why does this thing need to keep jumping around? Okay, so what might that be? It was just up on that slide if you're looking at it. A radula, okay? So all these animals have a shell. Some are on the outside, some are on the inside. Then they also have what's called a radula, okay? And what that refers to in food gathering concepts or purposes is you got these teeth that are actually on the radula, and then this muscle structure called the odontophore that actually moves the radula, okay? So now we're starting to see different types of body tissue. So when we talk about cartilage in humans and mammals, what type of tissue would you believe cartilage is? Is it epithelial, nervous, muscular, or connective? You got a 25% chance, but you should be able to eliminate one of them pretty easily. What do you think? Because that's going to be one of the things where you go out in the workforce, whether you go to your associated career or career path, you're going to have to go through one of them processes where they're going to say, well, what do you think? What would you guess? You can eliminate nervous. It's not nervous tissue. So now you got down to a 33 or up to a 33% chance. And it has nothing to do with muscular tissue, so now you're up to 50%. So is it epithelial or connective? It is connective tissue, okay? So my point to this is these animals are becoming, as you can tell, more and more complex, because when we look at something like this, okay, where we got this tongue organ that has teeth on it, that means this is becoming more of an active predator. Otherwise, what we've been seeing is, well, are the sponges active? No, because they don't move. They're sessile. Do the cnidarians, are they active? Well, yes and no, because they have something that they don't need to have speed. So when they're going after their prey items, why do they not need speed? Yeah, they run into tentacles that are filled with venom. Exactly. Okay. So now, when we're looking at these animals, it's not that they're moving fast, which they're not, but they are moving. That's the main point we're getting at. Okay. So when we're looking at cartilage, where do you find cartilage in humans? Do you think? Yeah. Some in your nose, some in your ears, but the main place that you would probably find is more so in between joints, okay? And that's what we're referring to as far as that of cartilage. But for anyone who's ever, let's say, I don't want to say tweak an ankle or twist or even sprain, what's the problem with that? I mean, there's a problem with any sort of trauma on the body, but especially when it comes to joints with cartilage. The recovery time is what? It can be a lot longer, okay? Because when you, especially when you think of your ears, there's three different types of cartilage you would find in the body. One's fibrocartilage, one is elastic cartilage, and the other is hyaline cartilage. Some, again, you find outside the body, like that in your nose, in your ears. Some you find in between joints, okay? And it's those different types of tissues that are composed of cartilage that do not have an adequate blood supply. So when that happens, it takes longer for those tissues to possibly heal, okay? So now we're looking at more active predators, especially if you knew nothing about mollusks. The examples that we gave, who's probably the most active predator from what we gave that are mollusks, if you're listening to the selection of animals? That's one, and they're close cousins, squids, and probably even other close cousins that of the cuttlefish, okay? But the main idea behind that is more active predation, and these animals are becoming more and more complex. Okay? So earlier we talked about this head-foot structure, okay? So when we're looking at this, again, this is pertaining to that of the clam, okay? So any type of time you'd see something associated with a foot, you're going to think it's probably for movement, and this is no exception. Okay? Just kind of creeps right along with this structure. We got individuals taking the ASVAB test. You remember them wonderful times last year? Is it pointing you in the right direction, people? Yes? No? You did not want to take it? Oh, okay. Well, I can't really remember. I think you had to take that to go in the military too. No, that's not as. Is it ADVAB? I can't. Okay. And for those of you who have taken, if you're thinking, man, if you couldn't score above a 35, there's problems. Maybe yes, maybe no. I took it 90, I think. And you people may have scored even higher than me. Maybe yes, maybe no. One of the things, sometimes how do I want to say this? What some people may not have with a college education, they certainly make up for with that of experience. And for some of you farmers, I just remember growing up, and if I had to back a silage wagon or a gravity wagon into a certain spot, I could be there all morning and have problems with that, or a hay rack where my dad just climbed right on top of it and right in it goes, right where he wanted it. How many of you farmers can do that? I struggle with that. Unlike that of I think it'd be a little easier with maybe a semi or some sort of trailer where the tongue does not move, where it's fixed. Where it's not what? Right. That's what I'm getting at. I think I probably try to keep it straight, and I look at the tongue instead of the back of the wagon. It's probably my biggest problem. Okay, so regardless then, oh, for Pete's sakes, I just hit the darn thing. My clicker, I just hit, oh, here it is. Okay, all right. So as we move forward then, now, uh, I believe we still have some clams left. There might not be very many, but when we look at this, not that you can see all these different layers, I suppose if you actually took the shell apart, you might see, you probably have to magnify it in order to see the different layers, but for specific reasons, okay? I would think that mineral storage is probably one of the biggest reasons that these animals have these structures. Just because when we think of humans with our skeleton, what do you think are some functions of mammals and humans' skeleton? Protection, that's rather obvious. Muscle attachment, that's true too. Okay. Another one might be for this, movement creating levers, okay? And then the last two might be not quite as obvious. One is our bone tissue actually produces red blood cells for us. And the last one is our bones actually store minerals for us as well. Whether it's calcium, whether it's phosphorus, and those are the main two that our bones store for us. Especially calcium is so important because we need that for muscle contraction, the ion calcium. Okay, I think, let's see here. We wanted to get through the clam shell, so I think it's one more here. And okay, we're almost done then. Okay. I think that was the three. Okay, peristracum prismatic, and then the nacreous layer. Okay. Now, this is going to be one of the aspects to where, okay, we have gas exchange taking place. So, in order for that to happen, an animal has to have one of two things. If it's not diffusing directly into the cells, which this is not, okay, because these animals have a circulatory system, okay, which is going to be important for a couple of reasons, and we will get into that at a later time. But as far as what we see here, gas exchange takes place through the body surface and in gills. So with a circulatory system, if an animal does not have gills, then what else must there be? Lungs. That's right. Okay. But in this case, with these animals, one of the few that have gills that's also tied into food gathering. Okay? Because when we think of other animals that have gills, whether it's lampreys or eels, or then the most common type of animal that have gills, you're probably thinking, well, of course, the fish, which are vertebrates then as well. And the vertebrates are by far more complex than these animals, which are considered as what? Not vertebrates, but invertebrates. So it's the major division in the animal kingdom. Animals with a backbone versus animals that lack a backbone. Okay? But again, in this case, these structures, of course, known as gills, operate to take oxygen from the water. That blood gas then diffuses into the body, or excuse me, into the gills, and then into the bloodstream, so it then can be circulated. And I think that's what the next slide is talking about. And yeah, right here. Okay, an open circulatory system. And this is how you know that we're referring to an open system, because there are blood sinuses. I'll tell you what that means here in just a moment. So take the knowledge that you have of either a mammal's or your circulatory system, okay? So when we make that comparison, okay, so humans and mammals, okay, yes, we both have, now we're comparing that to that of mollusks then, okay? So mollusks and mammals, no surprise there, both have a pumping heart, okay? Mammals and mollusks, no surprise, both have blood vessels. But what do you think, when it comes to mammals and humans, what is missing here? When we talk about blood vessels, that means arteries and veins, that's true, but there's another type of vessel that we're not mentioning when you hear arteries, veins, other than arterioles and venules. Those are just smaller arteries and veins. But what one are we missing as far as blood vessels are concerned? And it starts with a C. I know you've heard of it. It's how trees get water from through the roots. And how do they get that up into the leaves? It's because of this action that starts with a C as well. And if I just tell you, you're going to hit yourself in the head and say, I knew that. Okay, I'll give you a clue. Okay, it's not a hat, but what do we put on our head? A cap. Capillaries. That's right. Okay, so what's true about capillaries in mammals and humans, fish, reptiles? What do you think? What's significant about a capillary? It's very, very what? Say that again. It's very thin. So in other words, then nutrients and blood gases can diffuse into and out of those vessels very easily. But these animals don't have capillaries, okay? They just have what we call as blood sinuses. So for some people, does anyone here get bad headaches? So where are those headaches probably located? Okay, so that's not quite what I'm thinking. Okay, so why would we point to right here? What do you think are structures in the human cranium and skull? The open areas are called what? Sinuses. That's right. So since we have these open areas or sinuses in our craniums, that's just what that means. It's just a place where this blood pools, really. Okay? So it's pumping from a heart through blood vessels, okay, and then just pools at the end. Rather than going through capillaries, it just pools in these blood sinuses and then just sits there, okay? It doesn't have to be pumped to the lungs and back to the heart because, again, these animals don't breathe with lungs. They breathe with gills instead. So what that means, again, is as this blood just pools in that of the blood sinuses, it just sits there until then it contracts again and it pushes that blood back into that of the bloodstream. And one thing to keep in mind is when you may be lifting weights, you guys, when you are let's say you're doing curling like this, okay, when you really clench your fists, or even when you're going up like this, when all that weight comes back down, what happens to the blood vessels in your arms when all that weight comes down? It's sitting on your chest until you push it back up. All of those blood vessels are doing what? They're supposed to be straight like this, but eventually they do what? Curl, kink. Is that bad? Not really. It just means that blood's not flowing through there. And if blood is not going through, it's not delivering what to your muscles? Oxygen. So then eventually what's going to happen, you're going to feel that pain start to set in, especially for myself in some of these practices. Now that I'm not running with them, I just hop on a bike. So when you're not running with them, but rather pedaling a bike, you're losing, well, it's not you're losing, but your legs are working harder to pedal those bikes, and eventually when you're in a really high gear and you're going up a hill, it takes more effort to push those pedals. And when that happens, your leg muscles start to starve of oxygen because you're burning it up so quick to produce energy, and you can feel that burn inside your legs. Probably not at this age because you probably don't ride bike much anymore. Does that sound correct? Because if you're going somewhere, it's not in the bike, it's hopping in the vehicle probably. But what happens again is when your arm muscles, when they really clench like this, your arms are getting starved of oxygen until you push that back up again. So that's why you feel that burn or that pain inside of your arteries and veins. So women can probably climb better than what we can, than you gentlemen. Why might that be? And it's for the very same reason, okay? Because what physiological difference do men have as opposed to women when it comes to training? I mean, as far as after your training, men are going to do what on their skeleton more so than what women can? Build more muscle. The problem with building more muscle is it takes more energy to run, and it takes more, what I want to say, it's harder for your vessels to deliver that vital oxygen because your muscles are just so big, right? I mean, and that's one of the things that is just a physiological and anatomical difference between that of women and men. So because of that, that makes women probably more efficient at doing aerobic exercises like that. I mean, it doesn't mean that you men can't. Okay, yeah, you can. It's just women are probably better at that for that very reason. Because you may get about halfway up and it's just kind of, oh God, I can't go any further. And let me look for, I think there's just a little, there's something I want to read then. Okay, so we can certainly pick up with this tomorrow. I'll get your journals back. I'll explain what it is that I'm getting at here shortly. Okay, we'll pick up with this information, start with the gastropods tomorrow.